Hey guys, Mike for Gettin Greasy Garage, and got the El Camino fender up here. I went ahead and cut off the bad part. As you can see, she's pretty crunchy. I know how the shape's supposed to be. And we also have this inner fender structure that gives us our contour. I did leave the edge on here, so my hope is to be able to bring the new panel in right to this edge and just weld it right to it all the way down and around. That's still metal-like. This end lip, I'll have to obviously build a new lip for it, and I'll probably put a little piece in here, but I'm gonna go ahead and excuse me, use a disc and just prep this off. So I got a little bit of one of these rust pad things left, so I'm going to try that. All I'm doing here is just pulling it down to bare metal. Give me something to weld to. Yeah, gonna need to make a little piece for that too. That'll be easy to add to later. Go ahead and get this edge prepped. Try not to use sandpaper or anything to remove metal. And then this edge, there's just not a lot of metal left. And of course I'll grind all this and paint it with some rust stopper. That way this inner structure will be as good as it can be. I mean, in a perfect world, this car would get fenders, but you know, what do we do? On a budget. Anyway, I'll go ahead and get this all prepped out, and we'll take the piece we cut off, we'll move into the shop, and I'll show you guys how I'm going to go about making the panel. Alright guys, well, I got my basic shape laid out, and this is backwards because it'll end up flipped over with a bend in it and all that. But I got my basic shape laid out. This is just 22 gauge pieces of scrap. So I'm going to use the old Harbor Freight shears, just cut the basic shape out, and then we'll go to bending. Alright. And all these edges will be cut in to fit, so cutting butt on this edge and this edge, so I'm not even worried about them being perfect. And the same with where it sticks out into the fender. That'll get trimmed up later, so I'm just gonna get my basic pattern shape for now. And I even keep little scraps like this because I always end up making stuff out of them. So there's our basic panel shape. It'll be like this on the car, rounded down. This will be bent over, and then we'll use the shrinker stretcher to shrink our edge so it'll give it a nice contour. So anyway, on to the next part. Alright guys, well, see if you can see here. Turn it down a little bit. There you go. I just sanded this off. Not perfect, but better than it was. So I've already cut our main cross line. So I'm just gonna mark it off here. I'm gonna leave it wide because it, like I said, it's gonna get trimmed off. Let's see. About like that. Mark it on this side. And I'll grab the old piece and make sure that angles are right. And then we'll bend this on the Harbor Freight sheet metal brake. Get our first bend established. And start whipping this thing up. Alright guys, well I didn't show bending it, but as you can see, I got it formed to that side. There's plenty of overhang to be trimmed down. It's pretty square in the panel. So the next part of the operation, we're going to go to the shrinker stretcher and bring this part up to match this profile. That's why when you cut these pieces out, these old rusty pieces, save them for a pattern. I'm a big believer in that, and if you watch guys like Fitzy, Foose, you know, these different metal workers, they're taking an old rusty piece like this and turn it into something, and that's what I'm doing. So, alright, well, we're going to get moved out to the shrinker stretcher and start getting a little curve in this panel. Out here at my shrinker stretcher table. I wished I had room in the shop to keep this, but I don't. So I get it out when I need it. That's a shrinker. And the yellow one is a stretcher. And I mounted on this steel table with foot pedals. A lot of people build their own stands, or they just use a metal rod and do it by hand. I like a foot pedal. So anyway, this is the bottom fender section of the 69 El Camino that we're trying to recreate. And we got our new panel. Got our edge bent. So what the shrinker stretcher's for is to put this bend in it. So what it does, it puts a curve in metal like this. This piece I put in the stretcher, and as you can see, it's got a round to it. This was just a flat piece of metal with a 90 bend into it. Let's see if I can show it up close enough. It uses a little tiny, got jaws with little tiny teeth, and it stretches the metal, or it shrinks it together. Now, if this was shrunk, the curve would go the other way. So that gives you guys the idea. I made a profile gauge, so you can see kind of there. This way you guys can see it. That's the basic shape that we have to make. And then I also made one for the outside of the panel, so I can check the profile both ways to match up to this original piece. So shrinker stretchers aren't horribly expensive, but they have their purpose. When you're making little panels like this, they're really nice to have. I think Harbor Freight has these. These are not Harbor Freight ones. These come from an old metal worker, that guy that did custom metal work on cars for many years that my dad knew, and he's passed on, so they came here to the shop and I use them when I need them. So bear with me on the wind. We're kind of having some weird weather. It looks like might get a little rain, but we're under the pop-up awning here, so won't be too much of an issue. So anyway, I'm gonna get you guys in the tripod here, and we'll get to making a profile on this panel. I'm gonna put you guys in time lapse so you can watch me work fast. Alright guys, well, you saw me shrink this thing down. I'll give it a side view here. Got the right profile on it. Basically, the fender ends about here. Now, I am going to cut it and butt it up here, so it's actually going to be down a hair. But you can see, I got the right profile there. And this one here, you can see it's close. And when I cut it and weld it, you can see right there is where the end bend will be. So once it's all welded in, this side will maintain the taper of the end of the old fender here. So you can make patch panels pretty simple. They're not that complicated. I find that how I learned was just getting the tools and sitting there and playing with scrap pieces of metal and making things. There's sheet metal shops all over the place that'll happily let you dig through their scrap and get small pieces of metal to play with. You don't need to go out and buy new steel. And with basic tools, Harbor Freight brake, shrinker stretcher, you can make repair panels for your car. The stuff isn't complicated. So, and then as you can see, I've got it kind of profiled here. So it'll work out pretty good. I want to go ahead and move on to the next step, and we'll put the bend into it next. Alright guys, so I made up a profile gauge of where I need to put this bend at. I've already marked it. So this is the shape of the panel, and it needs to bend here at that angle. So I can just slide that right in, line it up, I'll even put a little pair of vice grips on it. Oh, come on. Okay. So we got our profile there. So we'll just bend. This part will get bent up and then trimmed off once it's fit in the car. And then I'll explain what we're doing here. Now I did, at this 90, I did take the cutoff wheel and come right along this edge. You guys make sure you can see what the hell I'm doing here. And trimmed it. So, close my razor knife because I will find it when that blade is out. So we'll bend this up now. Okay, that's pretty close. Okay, bring it back down here. Alright, well, now I'll unclamp it. As you can see, there's a profile gauge. We hit our angle. So what we've got left is this. And I'm just going to bend that right down over. And that way, it gives it kind of a rounded edge. I'll cut it off and then I'll weld it to this part. And I won't show you guys all that. I'll go ahead and get this part done and then bring you guys back to see what we came up with. Alright guys, well I told you I'd bring you back when I got this welded together. And as you can see, I'll drop a piece here, but I got the end all finished out. So this was the piece that would have been attached onto this part. I just cut it at the 90 and then I brought it up here. Actually it was like this and I bent it over, so, and it even, you know, it ended up a little bit of an angle, doesn't matter. I trimmed it off and then I just welded it up, ground it down. That gives you the proper transition. I got the proper roll. And again, this end is, there's the end of the fender, that the existing original piece of the fender is still there, so I'll cut and butt this to match, and the same across the top. So I'm going to show that in a separate video. But yeah, it turned out pretty good. I'm happy with it. Got the right amount of roll. And this is not difficult stuff to make. That is to replace that. That's what's left of the original. And if we hold it on there, it's kind of crunchy, but there we go. That's it. I think it turned out pretty good. There was a lot missing. I mean, you know, it's still going to lose probably 1/4 inch, but that's the profile of it. So, if you got a little bit of patience and a few basic tools, I mean, a shrinker stretcher, I think you can get those for under $200 at Harbor Freight. And those sheet metal brakes are inexpensive. you know, some Vise Grip locking clamps and maybe a couple body hammers. But I learned how to do this. Anybody can learn how to do it. Just have some patience. And yeah, you know, if you don't have money but you got some metal laying around and a few tools, you know, even if I didn't have some of the tools, if I didn't have a shrinker stretcher, I could still pie cut this and put the bend in it that I need and then weld it back together. That only takes a welder and some tin snips. So, but anyway guys, this video is probably long enough. That's the patch panel for the El Camino. And next video, like I said, we'll get on to putting it on the fender and patching some other spots in that fender. I still prefer to use as much original metal as possible, i.e. fix up these old fenders is better than the repop ones. There's different brands of stuff out there. Some is better than others, but you know, Dad don't have $500 to buy a fender. But I got a little bit extra time, a few tools, and some metal. So we'll make it work and make it look good. And you know, this isn't coach building where the body's going to stay in metal and bare metal anyway. It's going to get, you know, a skim coat of mud in it and sand it down, and it'll be just fine. You'll never know the difference. So I don't know, just a matter of what a guy wants to do. So anyway guys, I'm going to get busy on something else here. So I just want to say thanks for watching, thanks for supporting the channel. If you would, thumbs up the video, that really helps. Like, comment, share, subscribe if you're not. Welcome if you are a new subscriber. We hit 400. That's a milestone for the channel. I appreciate you guys watching. And yeah, let's keep building this thing. Anyway, stay greasy, my friends.